2007. And I tracked them at both schools to see if they graduated in the year 2011. So once North had RJ and the other school did not. And you can see that I did not find a statistically significant difference. However, I did see a trend with North High School having a greater graduation rate between these students, which means that RJ helped these students reintegrate back into the community and have a successful graduation. Whereas the other school that did not have RJ, they weren't as well reintegrated back in the community and therefore did not complete at this other school. My other question that I looked at is I looked at suspension rates between just North High School. So I wanted to track the freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors between 2007 and 2010 to see what happened to their suspension rates after RJ was implemented. So I started with the first year, 2007, when the program was introduced into North, and I tracked the 4 years after it had been introduced. What I found a statistically significant P with this, and I wanted to point out that sophomores reduced their suspension rates by 34%, juniors reduced their suspension rates by 80%, and seniors reduced theirs by 45% after RJ was introduced in the school for 4 years. This meant that fewer students were getting suspended at North High School after 4 years of RJ. And I will address the freshman increase. So this bar graph just represents this decrease with a spike in the freshmen. My thought on this is after I showed my supervisor this data, he told me that 2007, there was no freshman dean of discipline. So these referrals were just getting emailed to an empty inbox and they weren't being addressed. Whereas in 2010, they overhired and they hired 2 freshman deans of discipline to deal with all these referrals, and therefore the rate of suspensions did increase because they were being addressed. However, I also want to point out that once these freshmen became sophomores, they learned about the RJ philosophy, their rights, the restorative approach, and they were able to handle their conflict internally. Therefore, the referrals went down, and so did the suspension rate each year they went through the high school process. So the suspension data is evidence of a culture shift within North High School once these students embraced the philosophy along with the administration. The staff also embraced it and used it within their classrooms before even making a referral to the discipline team. So it creates a culture of listening, understanding, and a solution-based thinking between the administration, the staff, and the students. It's an open atmosphere of communication. Once RJ was introduced into the school, suspensions decreased significantly, which allowed more days in school for these students, which allowed them more opportunity to gain to that 4-year success of graduation, and then which lets them have a high school diploma so they can go out and succeed in the everyday world. And these 2 students, they were at North while I was doing this. They're part of the data. They graduated last year, and they're going to share with you some of their success stories with RJ at North.
So, as she said, we were part of that data. I didn't know we were part of that data until right now. So, I was like, oh, all right, cool. So, but my story is very common to what happened to a lot of freshmen. It started off by me hanging out with the wrong crowd. I was bitching every day. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't feel like the school wanted me there. So what happened is I started hanging out with the gangs. I don't want you guys to think that that's a reflection of what I am now, because that's the total opposite of what I am now. And I changed my life completely ever since then. What happened was that we ditched school and I got jumped. And getting jumped means that you get initiated into the gang. It's either you do a crime or you get beat up. It's whatever the gang picks. And in my case, it was me getting beat up by 6 or 7 guys that week. After that, the school found out. They wanted to suspend me, send me to court, give me a ticket, and make me do community service while I was in school. And for me, suspensions, I hated them because it made me feel like the school didn't want me there. It made me feel unwanted. And my options were those were my options at that time. And then the school administrator actually presented me to Ben Carnes, who was the Restorative Justice, one of the Restorative Justice founders for North. And he did for me was he found a way for me to solve that issue in a different way. Instead of getting the ticket and community service and the suspension, I talked to the school the administrators, and I made a contract with them that said I would go to school every day. I wouldn't ditch anymore. I wouldn't hang out with the gang members anymore. And they talked to the gang members too, and they told them to leave me alone. And that was what Restorative Justice did for me, to avoid the tickets and suspensions and community service, because I honestly think if I would have got the suspension and all that, I wouldn't have been able to graduate. I would have felt like North just was a place where I was just going to get kicked out every day for the rest of my high school years. And I'm really glad that Restorative Justice stepped in, because, I mean, I would have headed down the wrong road after that. I mean, I for sure wouldn't have gone to school. It would have been a place that I just saw as a bad thing instead of a place to learn. And, I mean, Restorative Justice really does change a lot of things at North. And it's changed the culture and the way students react to gangs and fights now. I mean, gangs and fights used to be the cool thing back then, and now when I graduated, it was the total opposite. I mean, if you saw somebody in a gang affiliated with clothes or whatever, we'd be like, dude, that's not cool no more, so just quit it, you know? I mean, it's not funny, it's not cool, it's not something everybody does anymore. And it definitely changed the community. I mean, the community saw everybody in a different way. Nobody was scared to go outside anymore during the school hours. And I mean, it really changed everything around North. And Danica actually has a story of how Restorative Justice helped her too.
Alright, so kind of the same thing, you know, freshman, I was actually at the point of dropping out, fighting, you know, the whole drugs, being around the wrong people, that whole thing. Well then, I saw it, hey, when I'm a freshman, you're going to suspend me? That's a vacation for me. Like, it's okay, you're giving me 5 days to go home and sleep. There's no punishment there. My parents were like, what can they do? They could ground me, but I'm going to stay home and sleep anyways. So, into my sophomore year, I started talking with Ben. You know, fights never happened anymore. I was never fighting because he knew before anyone else knew. And instead of, you know, going to the streets after he found out, we'd go and sit down and talk about it. You know, instead of leading into drugs and ditching school, well then, we figured out why don't I want to be in school? Well, it's because, okay, if they don't want me here, then I'm not going to be here. I'll go find something better to do. So after I started going to RJ, I don't know, it actually opened my eyes a lot. I started doing better. Sophomore year, I got straight A's and B's, which led to my junior and senior year. Like, as Brandon was saying, you know, our freshman year, people were in groups. Like, gangs were cool. Now at the end, once you learn that the person you're about to fight with, or the person, you know, people you have problems with, they share a lot of stuff in common with you. And that's something you will never realize if you don't go through RJ. So it actually opens up your eyes, like, quite a bit. It helps you, I don't know, just see everything so much better. You go to school, you're actually looking forward to go to school, because you know that if you do something wrong, they're not just going to push you away. They're actually going to sit there and they care about you enough to talk about it, to help work it out. And
the suspensions for my freshman year went from, I don't even know, it was a lot. It was I don't know if it was thousands maybe? But it went from a lot to a little. And it cut down dramatically because of Restorative Justice. And I mean, the whole culture at North changed. I mean, I really wish you guys were there in my shoes my freshman year, to the point where I graduated, because it was such a dramatic change that nobody expected it to be like that. Everybody expected North to stay as the gang school, the school where everybody just fights and gets shot. Like, everybody expected it to be like that for years. And we changed all that from freshman year up to my sophomore year. Sophomore year, everything started changing. That's when everybody started realizing that it wasn't the cool thing to be in a gang anymore. So when it was our junior year, every gang-affiliated person there, or anybody who's in a gang wasn't doing it anymore. They were just students. They wanted to go to school. They wanted to learn. And by the time we graduated, there was no gang. There was no anything there anymore. And I mean, I really wish this was all over the schools, because it really helps, and it really sends a message out there that you can't. you can change no matter what. I mean, I really don't know how to explain it. It's just so you can change, and we're really proud that we got to be a part of that, and that we got to be a part of Restorative Justice and Jóvenes Unidos, because, I mean, if we weren't, I don't know where we'd be at right now.